Whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. That is a quote that is very commonly associated with Henry Ford. But the interesting thing about this is that this quote is not necessarily new. It was never really sourced directly to him saying it, and it appeared more often after his death. And the reason why I bring this quote up today is that it holds a truth in regards to astrology and how we work with our natal chart that is very ancient and dives so deep into human psychology, to how we choose to live life, how we choose to navigate the hard times in life, and how we choose to show up every day. And so one of the things I want to highlight today for you, where I like to say that astrology has to have a practical side as well, that the knowledge part is great. And in many ways, when you have your birth chart read, you gain some insights about yourself that you might not have been able to access. But if those insights doesn't give you practical ways of how to integrate that in your daily life so that you actually benefit from it, well, then astrology has not served its purpose. So today I'm going to give you a few examples of Saturn hard aspects in birth chart, and I will show you some examples where you can understand how this is one of the most difficult aspects, how that can both turn out positive and negative, if you will, depending on the kind of questions we ask. I always say when I look at a birth chart, you have to find out how to ask the right questions. Asking the right questions open the gate to a new level of understanding and consciousness about yourself. And that is when the true change starts to appear. And that's also when we start to really gain the benefits of astrology. So coming back to the quote on whether you believe you can or you can't, it's quite interesting because that quote in itself, or the essence of the quote, is something again that we can trace all the way back to one of the oldest written texts, which is Virgil's Aeneid, which is an epic poem. So, over time it has also been translated in different ways. But there's something, and I'll put it on the screen here, but there's a Latin quote from it that holds the same essence as this belief form, and it's along the line of possunt car posse videntur. So they are able to because they seem to be able, or they can because they think they can. So now you can see that this idea in humankind, in archetypes, is being passed on generation after generation. And one of the questions I often ask myself, for instance, is that why is it that someone who seemingly has a wonderful aspected planet or positions, birth chart, whatever, can be feeling extremely challenged in life, and others with, harder aspects and things that usually should get people a bit more down, are thriving. And again, the answers I always come to is that how we roll with the punches, how we work with life, how we choose to show up, how we choose to face the difficulties is our fate, that is our destiny. And one of the best examples of that is, for instance, in natives who have Saturn in opposition to their sun. That's probably one of the most difficult positions you can have, opposition square to the sun, because now we have the sun, which is your soul's essence, the reason why you integrated here on earth. You have a mission here, and that is from which you shine, in direct opposition to Saturn, the holder of time. It can also be father figures, authorities, the lessons that you have. So now those two elements are in direct opposition to each other, meaning that those elements are sort of fighting, or sort of needs active integration to not constantly be running into issues. So this is very often natives who later on in life, after around 40, 35, 40, starts to get a hang of life, starts to integrate the lessons, start to understand what works for them, and very often look to people who might have had it more easily, thinking, well, if I would only have been like that, my life would have been so much easier. We also see it very often that Saturn can be involved in regards to depression, and I always say that, yeah, that's, that might be very true, but astrology is not deterministic. It's not like when you have these aspects, you're gonna face this and this. To me, it's more a blueprint that we have chosen to work with, and we can either go with the flow or we can try to fight the current. And the more we look into the different levels of our birth chart, the more we will understand that there are never elements of the planets that are made to work against us. They are all made to have us expand into the version of life that we are meant to be. Because one important thing to remember is that in this human experience, there is a lot of comparison. There's a lot of looking to everyone else. There's a lot of hurting. There's a lot of things where we get to believe that we need to fit in or act or be like every other human in order for us to be recognized and have the love and have everything that we think that we want. Astrology looks different at it. It looks at us as a little piece of a broader puzzle of cosmos, and this broader puzzle is, in order for it to be a beautiful picture, each and every one of us needs to fulfill what we came here to fulfill. And there really is no sadder thing than a human being who doesn't even do the attempt to step into their greatest potential and their greatest way of being. And sometimes that greatest way of being, or not sometimes, always, that's very often a mindset. And I want to be careful with how I phrase this, because there are circumstances on this earth, obviously, that are heartbreaking and hard to understand. So I want to leave those aside, and I want to speak only to the astrology, the blueprints of those of us lucky enough to sit here on YouTube, educate ourselves, understand deeper aspects of ourselves, because we are the ones, when we work on ourselves, that make the true change in the world. Each and every one of us needs to first and foremost care enough about ourselves, not look outside there, but ourselves, to gain an understanding of what is our puzzle in this, what is our mission. And it always leads back to ourselves, that every time you can open a new chapter of understanding about yourself, it is as if there are doors in cosmos, in the world, in your everyday life that you didn't even know existed, that suddenly you are in that reality. And one of the other reasons why I wanted to come on here and make this little video update today is that today is the day after the solar eclipse at 20 degrees in Leo, which in itself is a giant portal of spiraling away from accumulated karma, opening portals and doorways, and letting go of versions of yourself so that you can walk into the reality and the path that you are supposed to walk. Particularly collectively, we had this solar eclipse in Leo, and Leo is also in the south node right now, meaning that this was not a classical set intentions, manifestations, portal, whatever people sometimes do at new moon, because this obviously is an eclipse. It was with new moon. It was a time to let go of many things, and you might still be feeling that very much today and a week ahead. And so one of the big questions for us collectively, again, bringing it back, is that how do we ask the right questions in order for our souls and our consciousness to continue expanding? And back to having, for instance, Saturn in opposition to your sun, one of the remedies there, I like to sometimes take one of the most extreme ones, because that's when it's really clicking for many of my clients and for myself that, oh yeah, there really are only two ways of approaching this, and you need to be very steadfast and determined in how you work around this. So have you ever wondered about this? Let's say someone gets a diagnosis that you have cancer, you're gonna die in 3 months, you have this thing, and one person say to themselves, fuck it, I'm gonna sell everything, I'm gonna travel the world, as long as I can still walk on my 2 feet, I can still breathe, I am going to get as much in of life as possible and make as much of a positive change that I can, and take in as much life as I can. And another person thinks, it doesn't matter, I'm gonna die anyway, so my life is just dreadful now, and yeah, I might as well just give up and stay in bed, and their health declines rapidly after. So taking these two sides, we can see how there really only are two ways in our mindset to work with hard aspects, hard situations in our life, which is, feeding destructive with destructive, versus taking everything as an opportunity to alchemize and maybe build up the courage you might not have had without that level of opposition. So let's say that Saturn again is in opposition to your sun. Many times in life you will have the feeling that there are forces or authorities, or maybe where you grew up, a father figure or authority figure that works directly against, in opposition to the person that you are supposed to be or who you know yourself to be. So you experience a great deal of suppression throughout your lifetime. Now we have a native that has really worked on resistance training. Sometimes this can also manifest as severe depression, like periods of really, really, really severe depression and despair, even thoughts of not wanting to be here anymore. There are two ways of working around this. There is the destructive way, that is like, it doesn't matter, no matter what I do, I will always end up in this situation because I do have proof that this is just how it works. The forces of the universe is against me, authority figures are against me, even my own mind is against me. And then there is the other side that is like, wow, look at me, how much muscle I have been building. I just came back over and over again, and no one is gonna knock me out because I have evidence that I was rising every single time I fell down. So now you can see how two ways of going on in life really starts to manifest over a period of time of lived experience. And one of the things that we all need to make a choice about is the moment we have had enough of a specific life situation or repeated pattern, because we all have them, and all of them can be seen in birth charts. We can see which planets do we have issues with areas of life might we meet obstacles over and over again, but we all get to a point in time where, isn't it a little bit boring to have the same issue over and over again? Don't you want to break out of it? And that's the moment where real change happens, because the native of the birth chart with hard aspects or transitions needs to reach a point of culmination where they decide so deeply within themselves the outcome is going to be different. So one of the questions we ask ourselves is also the medicine that we give ourselves. So let's say that we stick with the whether you believe you can or you can't, you are right. So now we suddenly have two ways of questioning ourselves and understanding perhaps a hard transition in our birth chart, perhaps as something really difficult happened. Well, am I honoring life or am I destroying life? And that can be really hard to truly understand the essence of before you have been down, begging on your knees yourself, being through difficulties and feeling you have no way out. It's that's a humbling experience. And those humbling experiences in life, there's no planets out there trying to punish us. But the ways that the cosmos works is that it pushes us and builds levels of, resistance training on each and every one on us and each and everyone in the collective, so that we move towards love, so that we move towards anchoring in light and love and higher consciousness here on earth, because that is one of the biggest ways in which our soul can channel the wisdom that we are. It is through choosing everything from the heart, from love. And now I can again go back to the big Leo portal we just had. Leo is opening our hearts to a new level of consciousness, a new level of understanding, leadership. And we can all look to the world and we can point to all the things that are wrong, and we can all agree that there are horrible things going on out there, and then we can focus only on those things. But we can also choose to come home to ourselves and focus on every single obstacle within ourselves, our constellation, that are not love and not loving to ourselves. So those are my thoughts on the mindset, the perceptions, and how to practically work with planetary aspects in our native chart to understand the kind of tests and trials that we are on here to experience. That doesn't take away from the pain and the hardship and the horrible things that, we find ourselves in situations where it's just so heavy that we don't know how to deal with it. It doesn't make that smaller, but we do get to have a level of saying in it, which is, again, whether you believe you can or you can't, you're right. And that is part of the different kind of psychological archetypes that we can choose to work with also through astrology. Let me know if there are anything that is particularly resonating for you in the comments below. And remember to like and subscribe, and I hope to catch you in another video.